Ngulchu Togme Zangpo tabje jibo Papa Salaya de Jamyangling yete bi chula samta lo ta pa do cha ge zo le ro ye cha do do jo jo bo jo chula samta lo do le ro la ya do la ba da la do shenga da ba yo de ye ge du lo ya sam za lo do ye ja je ta le da lo da ba ba ma la chi je go bo ba pa mo do ba je wa dong个句了嘛，那不说话的，毛我就是这小家生个也对嘛，这就白白的就搞到就把到这这，这里就句了嘛说话的，我就是这对嘛，就把那个我这就没有的这里就专门的这把就讲他们就了说话的，那是怎么的？这些个。个别大人老把钱包那个，现在把钱大多点，就说是不是就老也投集中，是咱我这没有这弄到咱这老公嘛。上了今年我就叫那个这边多的讲了说完的，嘛我搞到就像那么的我那那的去西头就个这个要的这些老嘛叫，这是多的叫了说话的，上了说话把些叫话到他们表上的成绩做上哈，上了有没有在做的做些别别，所以就这把来叫是当中啊，叫他期间去，要说别不就把去了，说这边都有的担心了，但把秋天的都说다 주로는 봐도 공을 대표받았더니 담조 등을 벌써하더니 원래 semji 탐지 누구를 줘쳐야 되더니 그래서 사주고 세월 못 줄 협정을 해봐야 하장 가와 줘봐가더니 다시 내려오고
All Dharma brothers and sisters who are gathered together here came here to make one's leisures and endowment related to this very fortunate life fruitful, which means that we have all come here for the purpose of generating loving kindness and compassion, for which I thank you all.
nāmbā sāñjī bē tēmbā rā sāñjī chōmjī yā kā jāchī trāng māngbō jībōng jē tē jē tōg yōn rā yāng tsāwā sāñchok sēm rā ndō sōng tēnī tōng bō ñām sēn līmbā rā tēnī pē nā kōk dī sāñchok sēm nāmbā jī rā ndō yō rē tēnī sāñchok sēm nāmbā jī tē yā tēnī ngō sō tē pā yō rā tēnī shijā yōng tēnī lop jōng shī rā mē wā tāp chē rā ñām sēn līmbā tēnī bō trē jā rē tēnī lā nī sōp jī mā dē rē tēnī ngā rā nī nā chōng jū lo chung jini lo chipsa zamno jini de yang lap de de ni se nyam le hinan de chu tham chi ga zawa re de me la sa chu sem de me la ole ji jab ji khonor bo chi song re o sa chu sem ta ma di le chu ji de jang chang ba ja de be ya la de ni de so go wang po ta je la wang po ji je dong ma ji de mi ji le so mi ta de ni ka yang 럽럽게 말이 되는 게 사족들도 하장 아침 보래. 근데 매년 옆에 가르치는 데가 충충마다 중교요 막 디선들이 로카시라. 대체 드리저랑 나 용디요 막 그 때문에 신기요 말에 디선날이 돼. 연장들이 누구한테 가라 그래. 냐편에 봐. 드리 참말라 대체 대합대. 대도 공디 항착하시 고도 지송세질 해서 제자
Excuse me. Gautama Buddha has given a tremendous amount of teachings to benefit sentient beings. This tremendous amount of teachings consist of 84,000 aspects of Dharma teachings, whose essence is the two bodhichittas. Sentient beings who have devotion and faith in the sublime Dharma and who do not have a very, very high level of intelligence need something that is matter of fact and something that is directly beneficial. That matter of fact and directly benefiting sublime Dharma teaching is what is contained in the little booklet called the 37 Bodhisattva Practices. ever since I was about 10 years of age, I learned and tried to practice these 37 Bodhisattva practices. If you have bodhichitta in your heart and you have the teachings of the sublime Dharma, you are a practitioner. The very renowned Kuna Rinpoche, a champion of bodhichitta, had this to say. He said, if you are well versed in all aspects of Dharma teachings and do not have bodhichitta in your heart, it is like a person without life force. A person without life force is a corpse. And if you do not have loving kindness and compassion, then any amount of Dhamma practice you do is of very little consequence. I myself am not a scholar, and I do not know a great deal of Dhamma teachings outside of the 37 Bodhisattva practices. But then 37 Bodhisattva practices form the essence of all Buddha's Dharma teachings.
대양 상족선 넘바 20바데 강해나 대다다 동담 상족선인데 이때는 상제 좀 뒤에 송래 상제 담체 상제 강내 송래 샘내 송요래 근데 샘도 요네 상제가 저요아래 근데 그 샘 들식 니보데더니 남도다 유무바 탑제다 자송들이 초당만이 차송화되라 대랑오라가 통화되라 동담에 상족선제 된 통화를 지발 통화 제가 좀 강는데 나디는 유무부 풍부지 저기동 대 나디니 중고요래 들이 되게 점네 들이 통화를 된 통화를 지발 가래 거지 나디가 니 보리 인핑을 놓게 거래서 들때는 인핑을 놓게라 고접 상족선송 된 남진냠니 탑제 자와 되니 상족선 나바니 되래.
I said there are two bodhichittas. We have the absolute bodhichitta, which is the originator of all enlightened beings. And when we have which one of you is responsible for that? For as long as you have a mind, you have the necessary seed for enlightenment. We call that the essence of the Buddhas. The essence of Buddha is a state of mind which is completely free of conceptual thoughts. Essence of the Buddha is, if we use an example, a bucket full of completely pure water, which is fit for human consumption. Now, when you start putting things, adding things in that water and stir it up, then a murkiness will develop. The murkiness which is obscuring one's own Buddha nature is attachment and grasping. Attachment and grasping arise out of afflictive emotions. Buddha taught us that there are 84,000 different types of afflictive emotions. We need to get rid of these afflictive emotions. To do that, we need antidotal weapon to fight them. The antidote to afflictive emotions is altruistic mind to benefit other beings, which means relative bodhichitta.
Teni dela dele thomar namu logo shwaraya asam. Teni dele kaina ta dari imprint tawa samhing jere samhing ngabda sore dele teni papa kine de wapsore. Teni jikti wapsore jikti spa dongi jamson de teni ole deva jorthol top down ne ba wangcha top deva de sore de teni kine de dela namu dele telanga ole kubayo teni de 강게 축구 로미즈 장송 올레 사제 축구 자살의 식촌이더니 콩나 받더니 다다 소소게 단지게 다진이 말고 로데 상데 들이 탐지 집에 이시나 갔다 왔대 라게 대식님 못돼 올레 제요들 상제데 대 콩나파게 zeg나 들이 호와다 냐데 취 탐제를 파로와다 처럼와 매봐 남카타버에 되게 강연에 빼놓고 semderchingimbo namkhatawa ne detela phanrowa chorongwa phentip bebela de de zikriores de la robotong le chik tong de ba de de nga so sepin khowa thamje di rangge jechingimbo ngo mam thong le de da le jo da de le chi cha yin dang de de le nyu mo mo je de tong song de dinang ni zo nyu mong chok de la ro chok cha ne de tak ba de 토리 성령이 속담라더니 맨 공도와토데 당 콜로나지 다든 로데 요래 데 대탐피를 삼히게게 망니들이 대탐피라 zeg무트 서리들 다다 랑라 디 탑을 남동네 라마게오신이 탐치당 데 박박진에서 와서 레지 대야 라마게오신이 탐치 다 삼히게래 데 대다 탐치라 들이 다들랑 ning 타관이 되니 다음에 봐 대통령 용띠 통 다음에 봐 되니 디 레전드에 소함해 봐 오시네 되니 이시지 대봐 되니 라지 탐피에 동에 다도 대봐 내가 대봐 좀 그거니 되니 ning 탁반이 되는 거 예수가 그 봐쇼이
It starts off. The 37 Bodhisattva practices starts off with the words homage to Lokeshvara. We are starting off with Lokeshvara because when we talk in terms of loving kindness and compassion, the very kind of source, the generator of loving kindness and compassion is generosity or our Lokiteshvara. Lokeshvara is Sanskrit word for Lokesh is samsara. Shvara is the Lord of samsara. And for homage to Lokeshvara, it says Namo in Tibetan, Namo Lokeshvara. Namo is homage. So we pay homage to our Lokiteshvara, who is the Lord of Samsara. Then it goes on to read, at all times I prostrate with respectful 3 doors to Supreme Guru and the protected generosity, who, though realizing that all phenomena neither come nor go, make single-minded effort for the sake of migrators. It's talking about the quality of Lokeshvara. Your Dhammakaya state, neither come nor go. You're referring to our Lokiteshvara. Our Lokiteshvara's Dharmakaya state of being does not go or come because Avalokitesvara is already an enlightened being. Enlightened being means one who has already awoken from attachment and expanded to the very limits of expansion the huge expanse of the true nature. So, enlightened beings, samsara, nirvana, these things neither come nor go because the case of the mind stream of our Avalokitesvara is like the space itself. And our Avalokitesvara always strives to benefit mother sentient beings, which is completely unlike we ordinary sentient beings. Our efforts are directed towards selfish ends because our nature is obscured by 84,000 afflictive emotions. Of these, the 6 most strong and powerful obscurations result us taking rebirth in the 6 realms of existence, which is labeled as samsara. So, homage or the respect is paid to one's lama or spiritual friend and Chenresi or Avalokitesvara. And the reason for paying respect and homage is because Avalokitesvara always works to benefit sentient beings. And for that purpose, we pay homage to Avalokitesvara with deep respect. There are 3 different types. The first one is respect arising out of inspiration. We are inspired because of the qualities of Avalokitesvara. Second kind of devotion is because we have a firm belief in Avalokitesvara, resulting from our understanding of how cause and effect works. Third kind of faith in Avalokitesvara is because we have the need and want to leave behind samsara, and towards that end we need the guidance and the leadership of someone like Avalokitesvara. And for that reason, with respect, we pay homage to Lokeshwara.
Tene pim di jung le dzogpa sangje namzi. Te pim di dara kwa mangbo ye tena. Oh. Rango le cha jala neka pim pa ta. Kangre. Le jumdi loa mi pa. Shi yung kore ye tabi chwe di shi la. Jumdi loa mi pa kangre. Oh, jo jing pin sang chok sem de la jiwa ni tselap tam she la. Dewa te, jo sang chok sem le. Yung do ti. Jo danzi ni sungu nyumu ba mkiwa tere, tata ke domi tamche tere nyumu be ziyo re, maangpala ndeke zota zo jimba re, tena, oh, ngar te le lan jopa chi shiwa, senche le la domsem che chi ba, le jimde shi suna, oh, maangpala yibji nawa tawa ta, sanchuk semde, or jiwa tsira mangpolo laya me bere tene, ha kone tene, neka pimba, oh, tatuk dewa de, di sanchuk semde nyabto lang suna, 사지 살로 어떻게 요래 랑을 차야잖아. 오래 내가 핀바다 다톡돼야. 야, 이거를 차야잖아. 랑라 핀바다 이라 돼와. 양고래. Rangla Pimba Sanji Chuku Jasatin Sanji Kosum Yongting Togum Yore, Yila Pimba de Rang Chuku Jasa Sene, Yina, Lonko the Zoka, Septi to Padamibache Toko Yore, Rangla Pimba and Yila Deva, that the Tamchi Kangli songs. Kangli song, Tabi Chulmochi sonnet, Tabi Chushipa Kangli, oh. That Sanji Jomding. Shani sobu chu tere. The chu de yang benako, the lante yuta, the lante tini, giving it in the range, Lani Shigore mother, Lani Machina, Chuyopa, and with the news of Pintoyoma. The Lani Shigore, Ole. The Lani did in Congressiva Chimbo with the Nipena, Ole. Jarvis aided, and to Sangi Purna Yire, Ole. That of the Lani Shigore Congress. Justin of the Lali Shepherd.
Next one is the perfect Buddha's source of benefit and happiness arise from accomplishing the sublime dharma. And as that accomplishment depends on knowing the dharma practices, I'll explain the Bodhisattva's practices. Source of happiness, source of benefit and happiness. And this has a very kind of profound meaning. Source of happiness and benefit. And in another way, we can interpret this as temporary benefit. Temporary benefit is understanding the infallible nature of cause and effect relationship. And you will come to this kind of conclusion that cause and effect relationship is absolutely infallible. After you have an understanding of what sublime dharma is. What this means is, if you generate loving kindness and compassion, there will be peace and happiness. If you have attachment and grasping, it will result to pain and suffering. The kind of pain and suffering that you have right now is a result of your past attachment and grasping. And the kind of attachment and grasping you have right now is continuously creating pain and suffering of the future. So if you understand this, then confess all your past violations and make a resolution saying that with remorse feeling you will not repeat the same kind of mistakes again. And then with these kind of confession and making a pledge, and if you are able to generate loving kindness and compassion, then this loving kindness and compassion is likened to a wish-fulfilling jewel. So, we said one way of interpreting loving kindness and compassion is it brings about temporary benefit. That's one. And also it brings about, ultimately it brings about lasting peace and happiness, which is the actualization of the Buddha. Or as it says, the source of benefit and happiness. You can say bodhichitta is beneficial to others and brings about peace and happiness to one's own mind. And it is beneficial to oneself too, because the one will ultimately, because of loving kindness and compassion, actualize the three kayas of the Buddha, or the three bodies of the enlightened being. One will reach the Dharmakaya state of Buddhahood, and one can benefit others through your Sambhogakaya and Rupakaya manifestations. And from where do we get all these kind of benefits and powers? They come from the practice of sublime Dharma. And what is that sublime Dharma practice, you may ask? And that sublime Dharma practice is the teachings of the Buddha. And to practice the teachings of the Buddha, you need to seek for the guidance of a spiritual friend or a lama, because you need to actually put those teachings into practice. Just having the Dharma teachings accessible alone is not enough. So therefore, here as stated in the book, goes on to say, I will explain the Bodhisattva's practices. Bodhisattvas here in the Tibetan, originally in the Tibetan, it says, the prince and the princess of the monarch, so referred to the Bodhisattvas, like not just mere sons and daughters, but with utmost honorific name, a prince and princess.
Dinner, Jarvis says, Sanjay says, Sanjay, Rick, your part of you, so Sanjay said, Sula, Sanjay Sanchok Samuel, this Sanjay saying, Sanchok Samuel, Doma Langmata, the drink Sanjay says, Sanjay says, the touch of the Sula Sanchok Samuel, Tangunate Sanjay say, Nambang Unite, Sanjay say,
Buddha's sons and Buddha's daughters. The sons and the daughters of the enlightened being. Of course, to begin with, all of us have the Buddha nature. Therefore, we qualify to be the sons and daughters of the enlightened being. On top of that, when you have bodhichitta, then obviously we all become sons and daughters of bodhichitta. Here one quick kind of translator's footnote. Sangye enlightened Buddha. Ki is a possessive case. Buddhas. Se is only the short form of these, son and daughter, or prince and princess. Se po is the male, se mo is the female. So when it says se, there's a danger of mistaking it only for sons. So it can mean both.
Sanjay top gonna Tanjuk Jobje, the Mulu Gores, Tena Tata, Makom de Biela Machi, Tara Je, Tenirang Tango, Yoa Nga, Yin Tango, Yoa Nga, Yoa Ju, Tenitanjuk Jobje, the sort of Tango, Megalu Tomley, Chuche Shibazo, that Tango Yoret, or the Tabichugo Chubazo, Tango Yoret, or Tita was doing penalty, Trota was dead. Nikawade, Galgoni, Gigoni, Nikawa, de Chacham Yang Tapa song, Sanchok Simpile, Dele, Niko Yore, Hajakumbo, Trangagoni, Hika, in songs of the same the rig, Relong Lumba, and Naktar that out, Mulurumbo Chede, Metota was a really matter of your marriage. Rachibochil Ole, Teta, Hajak Nikao. Pegoni Hiko, Tangoni Hiko, Mango Songri, the data of the Tablicera, hlokore nde tawato thona ole tata raji niga simchi tabja rangke ko samla thipa mi bari ko sangi salep thje mare raji niga samla yinpi ge lochine rang sang je ro yo disenatli raji niga den ko wa dong ge jam sol jo chada tata chune thola dong ni ma du samni ole rangke 다비 니 지종다 삼노동 돈 똑바데 드립님이 밤이를 검네더니 니샘 검제 다티 자세 라리 쪼래서
Item number 1. At this time, when the difficult to gain ship of leisure and fortune has been obtained, ceaselessly hearing, pondering, and meditating day and night in order to liberate oneself and others from the ocean of cyclic existence is the Bodhisattva's practice. If you aspire to reach enlightenment, then we have to make the best use of this present life. This present life, which is blessed with the 8 leisures and 10 endowments. What really means is being born as a human being with wonderful opportunities and attributes. We are free of the 8 terrible conditions called 8 leisures. Freedom is 8 leisures. 10 endowments can be divided into 2 groups. 1, personal endowments, 5 of them, and other impersonal 5 endowments. So when we are blessed with 8 leisures and 10 endowments, when we are born as a human being and have access to sublime Dharma teaching, then this kind of human life is so rare to achieve. It is so difficult to be born as a human being with all these qualities. If you think in terms of the causes and conditions necessary to be born as a human being with all these qualities. The causes and conditions meaning in order to be born as a human being with these qualities, one will have to have observed a great many precepts to the letter. One will have to have generated a huge amount of loving kindness and compassion, or else it will not be possible to be born as a human being with all these qualities. We can look at the rarity of human life from a different angle. By comparison in number, if you compare human beings who have access to sublime Dharma teachings to other sentient beings in samsara. If you just pick a medium-sized hill, and if you think about how rare it is to find a desirable flower growing, one would assume that it is quite difficult to come across flowers. But being born as a human being with these qualities is even rarer. So when you are blessed with all these wonderful qualities, and if you keep on making efforts and spend all your time for selfish ends, then the purpose is not well served. On the other hand, if you worked to benefit other beings, the net result is that you yourself reach enlightenment. So your actions become mutually beneficial. So that's why it teaches us, when you are born as a human being with all these wonderful qualities, listen to the teachings, to reflect on the teachings, and meditate on the teachings. And these kind of actions are the actions of the Bodhisattva.
Then Koro Jansong, Koro go yet a Kangli, Zawa Kangli, then a Pena, or Koro ni Deva Shine, Kova Charlie, Shine, or no Charlotte in the Koro Yoret. Then a Pena di same in Numo to Kangdina, Dala Chane, Yuna Tang, or Chadang Yatore. Chadang is the Kangla Jedra. 단인지를 제어요래지. 드니 디 차당이 되게 변을 꼭 첫상마를 되나 올해 좀 마호들로 나보러 저들 접도래. 드니 샘도 고르디 상계의 대식님 모델 시랍 매가더니 강연 마시고 되니 꼭 올해 다 통로 차고 요래지. 나들 집부터 먹만 하지도 또 먹지 강내서 차당일이 좋은 거래지. 제가 대탐지에 서더니 사제 탐지가 파열빵 거 요래. 연애양 아주다 파열 빵고는 다 대장대가 가버리대. 오, 생거는 차당도 빵지도 이래. 파열 빵 맡으면 차당이가 다 쥐어래서 땡이 봐 시골해지.
To the mind of attachment to loved ones wavers like water. The mind of hatred of enemies burns like fire. The mind of ignorance that forgets what to adopt and what to discard is generally greatly obscured. Abandoning one's fatherland is the Bodhisattva's practice. Why are we lingering in samsara? That is because we are attached to sense pleasures. We are attached to samsara. Because of our desire and attachment, we are born and reborn in cyclic existence. The reason behind all this is the afflictive emotions. The main afflictive emotions are attachment and aversion. We are attached to our nears and dears. We are averse to our enemies. When we have attachment and aversion, then it is like pouring some dye in a clean bucket of water. The color and the transparency of the clean bucket of water is obscured by the dye. These afflictive emotions, attachment and aversion, obscure our Buddha nature. And it arises from ignorance. Ignorance really means not seeing the true nature and having attachment and aversion. That's why it says the bodhisattvas will abandon one's own homeland and go to a secluded place and practice. But we who aspire to be bodhisattvas cannot do that. We cannot abandon our homeland and run away to some secluded place. What we have to run away from is attachment and aversion.
Rangi jiwa hapsa zhang me pa yu only tsira huma rangi ninja tang zi zi rangi zhilin rong ma tamli tata zhali jo zi li yu li ole tsira huma zha zi tata rangi pa yu li jo zi li zili samlo tang zong o zhanyi ngime li tang yi zhanyi nisan zi ba zi ta ngunin chen shang li samli tani pa tang yom lo pen zi legendary chao hapsala samlotana ni dani mi bena te donha ko jire gogoret.
When we treat sentient beings, classify them as friends and enemies, These are all because of our past karma. What is considered as our enemy is one to whom you have failed to pay back for kindness in former lives. And what is your friends and relatives who are very close to you in this life have once upon a time been your enemies. So that is how, because of your karma, how things work. So when you understand this, then clinging on to attachment and aversion is nothing but delusion. That's why it calls for equanimity.
드니라고 차당이가 종인바 신은 드니세 당이 여러 탐시에 다 뜻하게 레점되게 신아 드니 뉴무바 인다 탐시 라쇼게 베라사라 셔특별해든 고노 특별해 영희 방배 뉴무바 탐시 레점데 드니데나 세열의 인사 메나 드니라고 샘디 시랍 치러놓고 시랍 치나 오 드니 give 피용 듣고 이맥 탐시 하 고런 쪽으로 사든 쪽으로 올해 드니 세군 내려가 빼대사 내터로 세군 내려가 하고 요래 되는 대탐시 위바디니 용디래세 위네 디탐나 알레 위바디 탐나 이디 대탐은 용거래세 내나요 셈 나도 위인터나 때때다 편절에 위바디 마탐나 되게도 셈데 뉴문 보고도 마셔와 제거래 제래장 제거래.
Third, when harmful places are abandoned, disturbing emotions gradually diminish. Without destruction, virtuous endeavors naturally increase. Being clear-minded, definite understanding of the Dharma arises. Resorting to secluded place is the Bodhisattva's practice. When you understand that attachment and aversion are negative, and then you will be able to overcome other afflictive emotions because the others are easier to conquer. If you do not have distractions out there, then it will be easier to practice and increase your wisdom. When you increase your wisdom, then you will have a deeper understanding of the Dharma. The separation of what is virtuous versus what is non-virtuous. When you have wisdom, increased wisdom, you will also be able to see the true nature of mind. So if you are able to go to a secluded place where there are no hustle and bustle, it is conducive to your Dharma practice. But here the message really is, the real message is trying to lessen and ultimately get rid of afflictive emotions from your mind stream, not the removal of your physical body from your wherever you are.
Tena ta tsenda ta chaksa hinsa gangre dena zeve ninro ole lu sakpa norde teni la jipe lu ndada tonda teni tsendela teni de namno tiba min der be pa che yore der be pa chi min rewa gangre dena ta to mang para teni pena ko ni so gu jo khonare che soma zawani ha ko yo ma lumbo tabjeke tena tsende jibo를 많이 빼놓고 어 tsende 생기가 돈 삼로 땅시고래서 chen de malam da re chen de yin tong tong le sang bo le che sama yin bo le so
Number 4, long associated companions will part from each other. Wealth and possessions obtained with effort will be left behind. Consciousness, the guest, will cast aside the guest house of the body. Letting go of this life is the Bodhisattva's practice. So we have a lot of attachment and grasping. We have attachment and grasping to our dear friends, all the wealth and possession we have accumulated. This physical body of ours, to all this we have a great deal of attachment and grasping. And practically every single effort that we put in our daily lives is aimed at accumulating and centered around self. And the net result is one's rebirth in the 3 lower realms of existence. So, the not so wise, or rather foolish ones, would not understand what lies ahead of them in the future, what the future has in store for them. If you understand that it is very important to work towards benefiting not only in this life but in your future, then that becomes an important part of your practice. And the Bodhisattvas will always strive to benefit them in the future.
Tene de la ta de me give hi pa give to po tin yo so da ni ta ye te ta ko la wo ya me tene de so e kira me di rang da da nyumo ba pe wa ta give le la pa che to ma o te da ko to de pang go res mu ja wa se da je pang go yo re te ta mu je le ge bo wa ga da ta ro de ni yo re te pang kha po yo re te pang ka si pang kha po le te tham je la sam nang yin je ge jor thon na ni ya mi song yu go re te tham chi chung yu ti le jor thon pa ti ni rang ge zu bi pa le de se na te tham chi ole chung yu ti le jor tha pa le zu pa ko ne na ko khong ro ma sho wa che na ni ya po yo re ro ge ba tham je la.
Number 5, when evil companions are associated with 3 poisons increase, the activities of listening, pondering, and meditation decline, and love and companionship are extinguished. Abandoning evil companions is the Bodhisattva's practice. This is fairly straightforward, and because there's not a great deal of time, so I wouldn't say a lot about this, but it will be kind of hard to, it is, you see, if your companion is a bad influence on you, then it is important to, get away from that bad influence. But so whoever is a good influence, one should associate with those companions. If you associate with really negative people, your own afflictive emotions are going to increase. And it is going to be, these companions will be an obstacle to your path to omniscience. But what if you are karmically connected with some beings, like your spouse, your companion, etc., etc., it will be extremely difficult to disassociate yourself from someone with whom you are karmically connected. So under such circumstances, you have to generate loving kindness and compassion. All the negativities must be transformed with your loving kindness and compassion. Whatever kind of shortcomings and negativities you come across, you have to take these into the path, transform them into qualities. And if you are able to do this, then you have perfected one of the 6 parameters, which is patience. And it will be talked about later on in one of the items.
사juk sem namba ni dala sopa tamche jumde tube lopungje na rangi ta mangmige mektawa nyingmige nyingtawa re pena tata chike pena di hula ole di nipa chimbo de yana de thola tangchana gang yo mari chike le jumde lopung tangchana jiwa chera mambo ko pena di mekche yo re de gebi hini hajang tsa chimbo re the rang lue ja kipa zingo de koji symbol 강에 대 루드 삼진동 강다와 다리대 야보나 게래 루드를 같이 집에 제거도 루드 답이 라야래 게히니데 집에도 게히니데 사축선 남아니 라게 줄을 야나 기와 체라 망보거든이 배나 라야 메베 노래되는 게히니데 랑 루에 자 치보래 삼 셈나 들이 야나 들이 게히니게 여티 강거 봐라 줄이 게 첩절에 네, 고땡 사고 링고레지.
When sublime spiritual friends are relied upon, one's faults are exhausted and one's qualities increase like the waxing moon. Holding sublime spiritual friends even more dear than one's own body is the Bodhisattva's practice. When you resort to a spiritual friend, and all the negativities that are within your mind stream will gradually come to a depletion. And instead of negativities, you will grow a lot of qualities in you. Those qualities meaning loving kindness and compassion, 2 bodhichittas, cause and effect relationship. Because the spiritual friend or a lama or a master will teach you how to generate the 2 bodhichittas. What is the meaning of cause and effect relationship? A spiritual master is someone who will give sight to the blind and heart to the heartless. Therefore, a spiritual master is a very important one. So, someone who shows you, who teaches you what cause and effect relationship is all about, someone who teaches you how to generate loving kindness and compassion is very precious to you. Therefore, one must regard such a spiritual master dearer than one's own life. In one of the verses here, it already says that one's own physical body is nothing more than a guest house. But a spiritual master is much more than a guest house. He or she is a person who is going to leave the imprint of 2 bodhichittas on your mind stream. That's why a spiritual master is important to oneself. If you can think on those lines, then you are going to naturally increase your wisdom. And this is kind of profound teaching.
Ryan Corbus or Kimba, so Jitibe, La, Yabda, Tani, Suman, Dami, Yore, the Tatam Jiggy, Jim Malato Batana, Damida Jat, Richin, the Nidik Chigi, Yore, or Tatam Jig, Jab Shuja, the Kaya, that a pena, Control Tamchi, the control from the Jab Shuju Kore, Kalajavi, that, Dumere, Yin Job to Jamaret, Yinga Kasi, the Rigger, in Nebatan, so with the knee. Control some D, Japan Pamadroma, Tela Sopa, Yadam was last shot up there. Nibatang took a married, the control can't take a married Pena, Ole, the retail Tamche, the Pane, control some the job on the Tini control, Pino can't take a married, the Pena. Control jump, control jump to just is.
7. What worldly God himself also bound in the prison of cyclic existence, able to protect others. Therefore, what refuge is sought, taking refuge in the undeceiving triple gem is the Bodhisattva's practice. When a samsaric being, oneself, is in the middle of this cyclic existence, what so-called protector can protect other beings? Cannot. I'll probably, cast some spells, etc. And when they themselves need to take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, how can they provide refuge to fellow sentient beings? So sometimes when you feel that you are affected by these so-called protectors, there are many of them, samsaric protectors. Immediately practice a real deity like a Tara and others. You do your Yidam deity practice and pray, and none of these samsaric protectors will harm you. Taking refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, this is the practice of bodhisattvas.
Tini dada nyumu banda semtong bang matab na bena sheda zu gao ngi song dong tab yo gang ni song je la nyumu ba song le bena shedang ne nyawa do cha da sen na yi de so ye da to mok de song den ro le de da nyumu ba de chok chen na tini la wang me be ko na shi pho ju ni tini cholam xiang te wa tab je na shi ma phon do go yo le tini de tam che ngi song song go yo de nyumu ba de som le 다단에 대해서 뭐 샘뷰라고 내마 줘봐. 제용을 가는 그 진식의 정례. 이 사조 샘대 위나부터 저렇게 유문 봐. 근데 별나고 라고더라. 내마 줘봐. 대해서 소라 밥게 되벌레. 남양 문제 자세라래. 소라 밥경들이랑 그 샘내 유문 받다 내마지. 들이 답자는 거래서. 유문 봐 샘토를 내사 안 보여래.
Number 8, the subduer said that all the unbearable suffering of the three lower realms is the fruition of wrongdoing. Therefore, never committing negative deeds, even at peril to one's life, is the bodhisattva's practice. Well, if you're not able to give up or abandon afflictive emotions, the afflictive emotions are going to create a lot of suffering. If you have a lot of anger, the nature of anger is the realm of hell. If you have a lot of desire, attachment, and stinginess, then you will be born in the hungry ghost realm. If you have a lot of ignorance, you will be born in the realm of animals. If you have these kind of negative emotions very, very strong, then when you pass away, your consciousness, instead of shooting up, is going to go downwards. And it is going to exit through either your navel or the two other lower apertures, and be born in the three lower realms of existence. Bodhichitta, on the other hand, is like a wish-fulfilling jewel. Therefore, not abandoning this wish-fulfilling jewel like bodhichitta is the practice of bodhisattvas.
대양 배는 토리섬 대화 중대 요아래 대양 개veller티니 종구 요래 개득 리마체베 대득 리마 연구 요래 대 탐체 끼직적으로 맞다봐 되니 맞는데 배놓고 유 통통 되니래 대화 탐체 짜대가 설바나 인접이 추진이래 배나 나서 용법감이 탐체 대화에나 개법감이 참아 동의는 줄 연구 요래 동의 장매 발에 배나 토리게 대화더라 대다 탐제 리차남을 롭네 동의의 삼나더니 코알이 시바 동그래 어때는 게더니 사제가 공방 톰라 근데 나양 들점 해봐지 삭바 매비 대화지 삭게 대화 못다 바람지래 동의게 저래 삭바 매비 대화지 샘들식이 뭐 코란 거라시대 라시 대화래 데르티는 거기 내가 갑단 다독이 대화이요래 남영 문제로 들이 답이 공황 네 조치고래서
The pleasure of the triple world, like a dewdrop on the tip of a blade of grass, is imperiled in a single moment. Striving for the supreme state of never-changing liberation is the bodhisattva's practice. The pleasures in the three higher realms of existence. Yes, you do have, some pleasure in the three higher realms of existence. And from where do we get these pleasures? It is the result of having done virtuous deeds. But these pleasures are impermanent. The lifespan is short. Whatever kind of pleasure you have, it is only like a dewdrop on a blade of grass, subject to change. And subject to change means when you are young, and you may have some pleasure, but it is going to change into suffering when you start getting aged. There are a lot of pain and suffering. If you think of these sufferings that you are going to look away from samsara, you are going to reverse your mentality. When you reach enlightenment, then it is eternal peace and happiness, because the nature of what is called Sugata Garva, means Buddha nature, is the very nature of Buddha nature is peace and happiness. It is peace and happiness now, and it is peace and happiness forever.
타비 공방의 동도 있냐? 다 가리고래들 타바마 토브제다리 히바나에 나디들이 나디데다 마달라 나다 공이 히바나이 르드블 보르소노야 바도니 드니 뉴모바 다 나디가 데네 다 데당 용보 칼라지베다 동이 다달이 장미바 드시레리는 레레 쉐비동이 요래 정랑 쌈지메 잡아 용네 드니 르메나르디 바지동이 용고 요래 드니 jeleta dandinde ta mulu moshiri je topa tundela ta dandinde jongu yore dami to go yore te to gona teni sanchok sepji ma jela ta dandi shik to yo mare te to gona ta garire ta saje to nelo ngotu nane Then Hoa Toma me but in the Lutang me but language. Then a Pama Maziva Chicken Yoman, meditation, Tatang Mo Shiro Mashiro, Denitela. Ah, Tango Yin, you think carry Yomar. Oh, and the datum just saying a Pama Majiba Yomari, some they lam similar Yunguri. Jivijan don't know the Pama Cherry, something similar to Yunguri. Nangba is a unit. Or theatre, that didn't know. That in Matam Jealousy was a Machina. Ole. That Jimmy Ranguni Pena, Mozawa. Ole. You on the Saji Satok when the Sanjo Machina. Oh, Rangoni Saji Satok when the Sanjo Machina talk with you. You only did the Martin of the Pamatricin of the Gillich and the Ranking de Vato, Hajang Mozawa to the race. Then it is Senatini. Sancho simply the Genejang, Rangi Kanga Tibe, the Sancho simply Jevores.
Number 10, when mothers who have been kind to one since beginningless time are suffering, what's the use of one's own happiness? Therefore, generating the mind of enlightenment in order to liberate limitless sentient beings is the Bodhisattva's practice. In order to reach enlightenment, one has to detach from attachment. And if you are not able to detach from attachment, when you discard this physical body, and then in the Pato stage, after death and before rebirth, you are going to be lingering about as a ghost, or an elemental spirit, etc. And although you do not have a physical body, with an imagined or phantom body, you are going to go through tremendous amount of pain and suffering. So therefore, when you have the opportunity in this present life as a human being, then it is important to train the mind to detach oneself from attachment and grasping, and strive to realize the discriminating wisdom of selflessness. This calls for the generation of loving kindness and compassion. You have to think of all sentient beings as your own parents, and realize the wonderful things that they have done for you. And when we talk in terms of all living beings, sentient beings, we are including everyone, including insects and birds. And this should be the view of all Buddhists. And if you do not have this loving kindness and compassion towards all mother sentient beings, you will not reach enlightenment. And it's a shameful thing that you do not pay back the kindness of all sentient beings who have been your own parents. So in order to benefit all sentient beings, generating bodhichitta is the practice of bodhisattvas.
Tēnā tātā tōng tērē pēnā dzōpa sāngcē yīngpīng sēmrē chōngō rē chī dōngi tāmcē tāpcē tō rē chōngō tī sēlē tērē tā sāngchō sēm jī dē tātā tā tōnglī chē kuyō rē yīngcē tōngi rānglā līmbā tā rāgī tēwā yērā tēwā tōnglī chē pā dē gupā tōng dē sāngcē tōpa chē tē rē sō.
Number 11, all suffering without exception comes from wishing for one's own happiness. The perfect Buddhas arise from the altruistic mind. Therefore, completely exchanging one's own happiness for the suffering of others is a bodhisattva's practice. See, as it says, all the Buddhas, enlightened beings, are the result of having generated altruistic mind. Whereas all pain and suffering arise because of your clinging to self and attachment. So when we practice Tonglé, the sending and receiving, we exchange our happiness for the suffering of sentient beings. So these are the practice of bodhisattvas.
This Sancho Sempre Gabby, that legend did a song of them, Hama part of me that that's a trojan marriage. Tell me, chapel and pelon shirt or yours, Jigny, Nero Shipagoni don't get me was. Suddenly, oh, that me Koran Cody, Punto Johnson, a Chiva, who took Duncan, that cook a pen and Tokyo. Cocheram Hama laying about Teresa, Tatayan co, Pango Cha, Punto Johnson go a child. What do you call? 다 망바라 그 랭이 받았다고 쌓고요. 그 랭이 박차 상황을 보고 섬이텔라 삼형제제를 빼나. 니네 삼형제 빼왜 탑. 섬이텔라 콩으로 와서 저서 송어 탑. 니 베네드리 상황 당고래스.
Item number 12. Even if others influenced by great desire steal all one's wealth or have it stolen, dedicating to them one's body, possessions, and virtues accumulated in the 3 times is the bodhisattva's practice. This must be practiced in order to generate, among other things, to generate bodhichitta. It is taking obstacles and impediments into the path, transforming suffering into happiness. It is a method to transform suffering into happiness. It is a method to increase bodhichitta. If someone comes and robs everything you ever possessed, including harm, bring about harm to your physical body, in the context of generating loving kindness and compassion, one must immediately think of cause and effect relationship. If you understand cause and effect relationship, then one will not face an awful lot of pain and suffering as a result. You will say, this perpetrator is doing all these negative deeds because he or she is a desperado. For countless number of lifetimes, having committed non-virtuous deeds, now born under these pathetic circumstances, where the person does not have other options but to do all these grave negative things. Therefore, instead of generating anger and frustration, one should generate loving kindness and compassion. And to generate loving kindness and compassion, you are using this situation as a tool, a method to increase your loving kindness and compassion. It is also a tool how not to generate anger.
Bethesda 사제 사초 수바탑지 종열로기 망보 요래 제 능기 다다양 가서 사초 sem고 바깝서 다다 입제 강령 매나야 데타와랑 그 배라 고주번에 갑자기 친나야 뒤갑이 산족 섬들 르마당와 르는 배로 장미 바도 로잉 바당에 초라 망보도 차례 다다당 산족 섬당 마달라 산족 섬들 산족 섬비 서들라가 르 소장 땅이야라 데이터 초삼님을 잡아 줬고요래 대마체 세니 되다 탐지 고통 타톡 게 상호 대발이고 대배나 네 사진 몰람 탐지는 쓴 거요래 ngā tēpā yōni yinā, dā ngā dungni yinā, dā ngā sēnyi yinā, dā tamjī dēng kō māng pārā, tāpa sāngō tēpā kōtō, sāngī mōnam tē sēm lē pē na, dī ngā tsūyā tēnā yī sāngō tā na, tāwā kāngli sāngchok sāng tē sōk sāyā mā tōng, sōni, kua tē chā kō rē tē. sāngchok sāng tē kōntō kē lā rō yō, kōntō mā chō tē tā sāngchok sāng shō yō mā rē.
Number 13, even if others cut off one's head when one is utterly blameless, taking upon oneself all their negative deeds by the power of compassion is a bodhisattva's practice. When you are completely blameless, because of past karmic consequence, you are blamed. A lot of these things had happened in the past when Buddhas and Bodhisattvas were murdered. And without any fault of your own, if someone comes and decapitates you, you must train the mind and be prepared not to lose your bodhichitta. The physical body is discarded many, many times. It's just like a change of clothes. Now, if you lose your bodhichitta, then it will have grave consequence. So instead of losing your bodhichitta, you should wish the perpetrator well. You should pray for him or her. Because the Buddhas of the past did. In their aspirational prayers, they said, those who come and harm me, those who beat me up, those who take my life, may they be able to sow the seed for omniscience. So even if it means your own life, not letting go of bodhicitta is the practice of bodhisattvas.
다 대마 다 인제 갈 많이 봐줘다 저 양 지가랑 거 삼모서 당 거래지 오 많이 받다 탐지게 빼는 메지를 대마시나 책해마 제 로 망볼 때 샘을 좀 나디 랍송 컨트롤 치는 때나 책들이 가는 지금을 쭉 컨트롤 제 락해 거래지 코 동다 잡아나기다 컨트롤 대인 잡아줘래 대나 소소 장보즈이나 고생이 봐주나 줄라 너봐요 말이지 치랑 니바도이나 고생 장보주나 니보요 말이지 제가 소소 딱게다 소소랑 셈장마이 고생 가래 주나야 고소니 봐 먹고 쇼사니 메리 올레 대탐실라 올레 아 수라량 빌고 대다 탐실 반신 봐주잖아 리냥 대서 그 올레 고송사 대그 올레 고도 주도라 그러나 비에되나 오 공장보고 제잖아 빈지보 니보 뭐 탐시 오 양답바리 삼니 콩소나 답배고 콩중 동쪽 바상을 별마다 요 말에 근데 가르친 버리 근데 연동 고주던 거 말에 책라 맞이 이제 쭈쭈 제네라 니바 줘 거래 더 요런 메로
Item number 14, even if someone broadcasts throughout the billion worlds of all sort of offensive remarks about one, speaking in turn of that person's qualities with a loving mind is the bodhisattva's practice. When someone says something unpleasant about you, think about it. If you do not know how to listen to that sound, one single negative word is going to impact you for years and generate a lot of anger. And when you generate anger, it is going to affect you negatively. What difference does it make if someone says something wonderful about you and you are not wonderful? What difference does it make if you are the same thing applies the other way around. See, when you concentrate too much about the next sentence, then you forget to kind of switch it other way around. Okay. So when someone says something negative about you, respond that statement with something very positive. And that is going to cause that person shame. So when you say something nice about the person in reply, all those who hear your reply, they are going to like it. And if you kind of dig up the faults of other being, that is not conforming to Bodhisattva's practice.
Ya lab la o chang ka te lab yon lab ya ta lab ju se song e ta chang lab ju yo we tang la o zo ngor dong ba ta tri lab ko re
Ugo. This is going to be very interesting.
Tema se chang ji dong na dong o ya ta dong da ya.
Number 15, even if in the midst of a public gathering someone exposes fault and speaks ill of one, humbling, paying homage to that person, perceiving him as a spiritual friend is the Bodhisattva's practice. Just imagine in a huge gathering, someone digs up all your faults and shouts on top of his or her lung. Then how would you respond to that? See, we are the practitioner of bodhichitta. Bodhichitta in Tibetan word is sempa, is the one with the heroic mind. What's this talk about heroic? You should have that confidence. You should say to yourself that I am a practitioner of bodhichitta. And I have the capacity to endure whatever others can dish out to me. So you should have that kind of attitude. So when others start to display all your dirty laundry in public, what you should say, thank you very much. When Rinpoche says, Toji che, that means, thank you very much, you should say. And say, I am a heroic person, and I can conquer my afflictive emotions. I am an arahat, or an ascended master. There's ascension from the ordinary to the not so ordinary. But instead of doing that, if you went tit for tat, and then that wouldn't work out. That would not conform to a heroic practitioner. So what you should say is, you should say, love, love. That means, come on, say more faults. Display some more, dig up some more faults. Say asomas. Now, have you finished? Have you, dug out everything? Love ungo means, love means, come on, say it. The ungo part is, You say that kind of as an endearment. You know, the only thing that comes to mind in the Western equivalent is, the honey and the sugar and all this. So you should have that kind of attitude. So, and the last one, Rinpoche says, okay, if you want to beat me up, come on, go ahead, beat me up, ungwa, means sugar or honey, come on.
I really give all away. Re, ta di ning part di tongsi chorok pangde. Ze kawa de mangbu re de da pöbyi par chang me de. Rang tsebe zhuo yin na da, pomo yin na da, shi de yin na da. Aya, di na rang ge yun bo chang kang yin na di zewa de nga san chok sem yin sa dang de sem zong gu yo le pe la. Oh, rang zhuo bo de yin na, oh, ta yun bo nga ni rewa ji wa de yin jing ho be rewa le de yin yang de zewa da san chok sem yin de. Sem pi tam chen de na ji ma je ba yo ma le. Garchen muso de ole rapchi timbo chana da kaka songna da zewa de da sanchok semi de da po jap de na te gare yen zo pa yo le te zewa de song shi yo le mune sanchok semi jon ro yo le te mun ko be zewa de ni chung ne jo o ra ge chi no ole chap zewa de ole da chap pa yo na zewa yo ya nga ma de de da dal jon ro le de ha ja zap ko 다그 법이지 발장만 매다 너 탑지 내 쨌당 되니 랑상쪽 선바인데 yin 탑지 네 반하게 따고 손질라 대당지 때는 되니 능계래 제게래 다들이 뒤뒤치에 다 좋아래 노노데 그래
16. Even if someone for whom one has cared as lovingly as his own child regards one as an enemy, to cherish that person as dearly as mother does an ailing child is the Bodhisattva's practice. There are many cases where patience and endurance and tolerance may fail. Like we all have, you will have friends, husband, wife, sons and daughters. And towards your family members you naturally have love. That love, you must always think that it is not ordinary love, but it is bodhichitta. And when you live together for a long, long time, and you should say that, yes, this kind of love it's samsaric love, it's ordinary love, but I want to transform it into bodhichitta. And when you transform your ordinary love into bodhichitta, then the way it will benefit is if the husband and wife, if they get married and live happily ever after, it is good, it is loving kindness, compassion. But if they should separate, then that love will still be there in the form of loving kindness and compassion, bodhicitta. Otherwise, normally what happens is when you have this ordinary love for each other, whenever things go right and whenever things work out, you will have that love. Whenever things do not work out, that love will change into anger and aggression. So because you are a practitioner of bodhicitta, whatever situation one faces, one must look at the other as a very sick person and who is going through a lot of pain and suffering, and generate bodhichitta. There's not a great deal of time there. That's why Rinpoche says it is a kind of quick summary.
동해 당들림마다 탐지 강연이나 당들림에 감이 셈면 봐 동해 당입기라서 봐 강연이 동해 시바데 끼나봐 나서리 동해기 생우들 대화도 동해니 딱 봐도 요 말해 강연은 먼저 봐대 동해 제 용어 감이 소소라 동해 시바데 먼저 봐 용어 감이 셈기 탐지를 먼저 봐는 거 찍바래 되는 셈기 탐지가 찹 나이 자 동링 시바자 데리 뭐 셈지 담지게 동에 참대자 대화 용감이 나그 대화도 셈지 탐지에서 토발 주고서 호와지 동에 감저 동링지 드리지 고로 드린디 저거 봐대 니바 자신 로망저들 양아지 치래 양아지 농고래 강 따장 셈 장마 쳐너기 되더니 강양 말이 봐. 어래 샘장마 제고요. 아제리라 조금 말해. 빠심나 되게 말했더니 강자전들다 때다 골하오래 그거.
And the next one is item number 17. And sometimes when you get intimidated and looked down and belittled, and this item number 17 is taking these kind of unfavorable situations into the path. And at number 18, and same thing, it also taking misfortune into the path. And when you are suffering pain, you're going through pain and suffering, and accepting pain and suffering, and not kind of getting completely broken down and overwhelmed is one way of making sure that the mind stays on track. Suffering really means it is caused by a whole lot of causes and conditions. Suffering really means something that is not wanted or needed. And aversion brings pain and suffering. So when you take these kind of into path, instead of crying about it, take these misfortunes into the path. We normally practice Tonglen. When you practice Tonglen, whatever kind of unfortunate circumstance you are having to face, it may be challenges, it may be, a lot of pain in your heart, it may be anything. And then immediately you think that other sentient beings might be undergoing similar situations. And then say to yourself that, I am taking upon my shoulder all the pain and suffering, similar pain and suffering faced by others. And whenever you have peace and happiness in your mind, then extend those pain, happiness and peace to all sentient beings. And wish that all sentient beings will have happiness and peace that you are experiencing. Item number 19 is about taking egocentric pride into the path. One's nature of mind is like a pristine and clean water. When you have this egocentric pride, it pollutes the nature of your mind. So.
The Shedang Nubagomba, Tako Lavore. Me Shedang Kinjina, Sendana, Sama Dravore. Oh, Tako Desanya Sakambachin, the day Matapatini, Topatini, Tenere, Drawcheck the Mountain Royore. Says Samayo, the Nyawa, the Sozo, Rangasem Shedang, Digis Zoyore, Bena, Ole, Munitani, Ole the opportunity. Oh, Chini Shedang on the tennis also don't the dector last of Gang Tampi, Shedang Quangi Zoyore, Bena. Tena, Shedang the Rangi, Maisonga. Tata and Pena Malam Tamjin, John Dodo, Sisama Pena, some Hingirazo, Tapish and Kamtamchi, Chai and Goyore, Shedanganato, Nava Chakayore, then a Dina you call Laure, me.
Item number 20 is about hatred, taking hatred into the path. If one's foes are destroyed while not subduing the enemy of one's own hatred, enemies will only increase. Therefore, subduing one's own mind with the army of love and compassion is Bodhisattva's practice. If you have a lot of hatred, then whosoever you see, you will see in a negative light. And when you have hatred, it is the cause for your rebirth in the realm of hell in the future. And when you have hatred in your heart, it will reflect on your face and expression. When you do not have hatred, then even your dream will be a nice dream. So, understanding that hatred is the cause for one's rebirth in hell, the very nature of hatred is hell. This is easy to understand, so one should take this into the path.
강을 신바요 바데 유통송 네 가려 뇌바요는 다다 강을 신차 치와데 산이 싫어야 뒤박차데 샤롱디 근데 뒤를 동해상 좀 잡반 용구요래 대는 빼는지 주다트로리자라서 바탐체 원참적게는 빼나와래 라버들이 창당 담만나고 대라서 바 뇌바요 바탐체 저 공선은 이 시제에는 다 शे도는 대통 동네에 접어들이 차대요래 원래 디스나더니 라는 투딘 조어시네 올해 나 드니랑게 지당 못 조어지야 요 말에 배나 드니네 신차 탐제 방거리 찌땅 콜와데 배나 공만함 다외 송 자양대야도 송고 요래 드니 이제
21. However much sense pleasures like salt water are enjoyed, craving still increases. Immediately abandoning whatever things give rise to clinging and attachments to the Bodhisattva's practice. So all the sense objects is just like salt water. The more you drink, the more you need. When you have a lot of attachment and clinging, and you will pass. When you die, you will have all these negative imprints on your mind stream. So, all the sense pleasures out there, use them in moderation. Excessive use of alcohol, and drug, and cigarette smoking, etc. These are not conducive to your practice. And one should say, even if it means once my own life, I'm not going to indulge in these. These are not good for your health either. So this particular verse teaches us to abandon attachment and clinging.
Jeta no the rang same song. Tante Tondam Sanjuk Semre, any temporary of Kangin at any Honte Chutamji, same Gizuore, same Kari, Namtota, New Mubala, Demban Zini, any telecan Kushibado, Kova the take a troviore. Then it's same Latana, same Koran Dini, Tata Danji. Dakshin Tabia Tava, the Namkata Pena, the Tatango di Sadok and Dreshiana, the new Mishaba Sopa, the Sunguyore. Tata the Sotaket and Pena Simco, Nampo, maybe Simtiva, Teala, Namkata, Sartong Sung you, Ole, Semi Dune, driven Tata, Ole. Salongo Toma, Tomo, Saradino. Oh, same Taptaget and Nampo, maybe same day, Kang Toya, maybe Namkata. Oh, they're Tomba. This are all like Shibake. Kang do some talking Shibasa water, Savadi. Oh, didn't Tong Tampa, didn't Miso Japte and the Ripeco. Don't tamp a deba, then you start to come sooner. Then you sang Togo Tawadi. The temperature chamber, the Tong Tam. The niche is Zungdin Sima Nam, the Zungdin, the Zunga Yellow, the Basipata, the Nam Nambo, the Debardina, Lesa Angore, Pen Shedangrina, Shedang Chimata, the Kaga Turkey, Lagatopa, Lesa Angore, Shedan Korasa, Data Yajan, and Mean over Garson Cade Yomare, or the Nay Yomare, or Shedan Koranjaya, and Mean over it. Or Tashi let any book, something Simana Yellam, just a lady. No more Tona, Ishila, and
22 appearances are one's own mind. From the beginning, mind's nature is free from the extremes of elaboration. Knowing this, not to engage the mind in subject-object duality is the Bodhisattva's practice. Talking about appearances, bodhichitta, and this particular verse is a very auspicious in terms of interdependent origination. All phenomena of samsara and nirvana are the creations of the mind. Conceptual thoughts, afflictive emotions. When you have grasping, when you treat these as a reality, then you create samsara. When you detach from this kind of grasping, because the nature of mind is beyond the four extremes. The nature of mind, or spoken differently, the Dzogchen teachings, Mahamudra teachings, the great Madhyamika teachings, they're all talking about the same nature of mind. It is the mind which is completely free of conceptual thoughts, a mind which is likened to the huge expanse of space, a mind which is the union of clarity and emptiness, a mind which is free of elaboration. The union of clarity and emptiness, meaning that clarity whose essence is emptiness, that emptiness whose essence is clarity. And it is just like the huge expanse of space, empty. That aspect of the mind which sees the emptiness, that clarity, the minute you see that clarity, you should rest yourself in that clarity. When you see that clarity which is accompanying the emptiness, and that is called the vipassana or insight. So, very good interdependent origination. Mind, which is, it says, interdependent in origination, and with that it has to have a melody. So that was the melody. So it is that the nature of that mind is free of this dualistic grasping, no subject, no object, no conceptual thoughts, no afflictive emotions. And in that state, it is something, clearly experienced, but like a rainbow which does not have any kind of independent reality.
Tini da maungpala da thru chok chare nipadung chu di chopa ga ni di sa chok chembe lok ko kangyen da kimpo ya bu yu yu le da kong kimpo na ba ni yu yu le gang da ja di sa chok chembe ju yu de ti jung go so yu le ro chi se chi so ta pye ni lo ma ta pye ke de sa chok chembe za wan da wo le la lin so de ma de ni de ba ji ba sa chok chembe ju yu le 무지대 롭트바 제레레 이거도 우리지나 다 참아 되게 쇼트바 대신은 미빠르도 드는데 봐 침보 요래 오래 하나지 챔비 탐지가 되네 배나 오래 제가 탐지 니지지 드니 사족샘 대 마톱리잖아 제 산이 거도 배우나 공나 봐라 사족샘 대 벌고 제제 가와 손한테 까추가면 참에 쿨고래 니 말에 차례 로고래 같이 로로 좀 그래야 이 속에다 로로 좀 가리는데 콘로도 다 로트 껴야 돼. 나는 네 말아봐 하나. 그 로트서 이메 올해 나래까지는 미쳐라 로트면 아 니는 로트랑 니들 타지. 라신 방쪽 개면에 매게 개리노 뭐리노 기어 말이지. 소소소 개리요 있잖아. 남바 사제 봐도 소소소 개리요 거래. 강리에는 추바 체디지 이미 라시 방법 요거지 라시 방법 야자 몇 킬리미 가는 봐요 말에 배나 내 주소 답에 대다도 랑게샘 짱 맞으는 랑게샘 삼행기라 컨트롤 타도 그 마그바지 제대로 몇 킬리미 가는 봐요 말에 산이 시대 랑로고라 오 랑랑 킬리요 그래 들이 제오지 두제지 여러 마다게 제가 제모요 네
And bodhichitta is so important. Therefore, in the future, trying to learn more about bodhichitta. We have Kempo here. In fact, we have Rinpoche's 2 Kempos. Rinpoche is referring to Kempo Tsutum in TMC and Kempo Sherabwase in Tucson, Arizona. Rinpoche says the Bodhichitta by Shantideva was already began teaching in Rochester, New York. Shantideva's Bodhichitta is an expanded commentary on the 37 Bodhisattva practices, if you like. So you try to, make sure that you have an opportunity to listen to such teaching, because bodhichitta is to benefit all sentient beings. Those of you who did not receive the 37 Bodhisattva practices will receive tomorrow. And when you receive, make sure that you bring it to Dharma teachings. And you need to read this book, and if possible, learn the 37 Bodhisattva practices by heart. Rinpoche says he has been reciting and practicing the 37 Bodhisattva practices for the last almost 60 years. 60. And Rinpoche says, I kind of depend everything on the 37 Bodhisattva practices. When I have questions, I ask my questions and find answers from the 37 Bodhisattva practices. Rinpoche says, my own mind is my own witness. It doesn't matter how others will receive the decisions that I make. Making my own mind as my own witness, I find the answers and solutions from the 37 Bodhisattva practices. If you are a genuine practitioner, then whatever things you do, you must do in the presence of, you must do using your own mind as your witness. And you all have a lot of love, Rinpoche says, and thank you very much.
Thank you.